Hello, this is Hart Jansen. I'm going to tell you about the passive house that my wife Daniela and I designed and built in South Oakville, with construction completing in 2013. I'm going to share a PowerPoint presentation with you that should take about 15 minutes. And be aware that you can pause on any slide that you would like when you're replaying this video if you want to spend a bit more time on it. So there are a handful of passive houses in Oakville. There's more information about Passive House at the website URL that's shown on the slide. I encourage you to visit that if you're interested. And the person who's in charge of that website is an Oakville resident, and his name is Ed Marion, who was the Passive House consultant on the Passive House that we built. So what is a passive house? Well, it's a house that's super energy efficient because it's super insulated and super airtight. It is the most comfortable home that we have ever lived in. And it's also very inexpensive to heat and cool because it's super insulated and airtight. And notice that it has about 1/8 of the greenhouse gas emissions compared to that of a conventional home. So Passive House is a Canadian standard, but it's based on the European standard called Passiv House from the German. However, it did originally stem from Saskatchewan. That's where the first version of the Passive House standard was created, and makes a lot of sense for our cold climate. So in the European Union, every public and private building must now be built to this standard. And it stands to reason because it means that every building is highly energy efficient. And that's what we need if we want to cut our greenhouse gas emissions, which is important these days. So a passive house uses solar orientation and larger windows on the south and west side, smaller windows on the north and east sides, also uses super insulation and super air tightness. And because the energy demand is low, you don't need a furnace to heat your house. You don't need a conventional air conditioning system. As you'll see, we use a heat pump for both, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. And our house is an insulated concrete form, semi-detached home. Again, you can build a passive house using conventional wood stud framing as well, or you can use straw bale. Any number of construction techniques can be used. So as I said, we finished our house in 2013. It's 2,150 square feet. It's a 2-story with a finished basement that has an 8-foot ceiling. And again, because we don't need a furnace, we don't need a gas line. That saves a bit of money during the construction. And we do our heating and air conditioning with the same air-to-air heat pump. Now, you might say, wow, if you have a super airtight home that's super insulated, doesn't it get stuffy? Well, we have a energy recovery ventilation system that's running 24/7. So we have fresh air coming into the house 24 hours a day. And it's energy efficient because the ventilation system exchanges the hot air, the heat energy of the outgoing air gets passed to the incoming cool air, and vice versa in the summer. And as far as the insulation, the walls are R47, the roof is R80, and even the basement, under the basement slab, we have foam that gives us R20 insulation. As far as air tightness, We did a blower door test that showed that under pressure, we have less than 1 air exchange per hour, 0.7 to be exact. The typical home, depending on when it was built, has between 6 and 12 air changes per hour because there are many leaks in the typical home that, and in the building jargon, it's called perforations of the building envelope. So when a passive house is built, care is taken to minimize and insulate well any building envelope perforations. So greenhouse gas emissions, typical house, the same size as ours would emit about 4 tons of greenhouse gases, and that's primarily due to the gas furnace, and partly due to electricity usage, because about 9% of the electricity in Ontario currently is generated using natural gas. So we emit about 500 kilograms of CO2 equivalent versus 4 tons for the average house. So it's not expensive to heat and cool. Again, for hot water, we also have an electric water heater. Again, not a gas water heater, but heating, air conditioning, hot water, all appliances, lights, et cetera, cost us $1,440, including tax. So a reasonably economical utility bill. And again, very comfortable. The humidity stays stable. Even in the winter, it's around 45% because of the ventilation system. Keeps the humidity more stable. We've got triple pane windows, making for a very quiet environment. And because we don't have gas in the house, we don't worry about carbon monoxide or gas leaks. We do have very thick walls. The walls are 6 inches of concrete with 5 inches of foam on each side. That is 5 inches of foam on the inside, 5 inches of foam on the outside, plus your drywall and your exterior covering. So 16 to 18 inches thick. It does mean you've got some nice window ledges for display space or a window seat. So we bought a lot south of Lakeshore that had a single 1.5-story dwelling on it. The lot was 60 by 160. And so we put, you'll see the final photo, we put 2 semis on this lot. So each is 30 by 160. And you might think, well, 30 feet, that's kind of narrow. The townhouses across the street are 15 feet. They have a lot of 15 feet wide, so 30 feet is relatively generous. Here you can see during construction, the insulated foam forms. They basically are self-contained forms. Concrete is poured in between the foam. And here you can see 2.5 inches of foam. We added, you'll see again, we added some more pink high density foam insulation on top, both sides, to give us our 47 insulation. Now those green tubes sticking out of the wall, one is the air intake and one is the air exhaust for the ventilation system. And here you can see, even though we are focusing on good insulation, we still have a very large window from the great room out to what will be the backyard deck. So lots of natural light coming in. Here you see the second floor. We have a flat roof. And again, you see the insulated concrete forms. This is the plywood on top of the roof that's covering the high density foam insulation in the flat attic. This shows you a ground loop. So this is plastic tubing that is snaking underneath the basement slab. So the basement slab is going to be poured on top of this after foam insulation gets laid on top of it. And also you can see here, the foam is insulating the walls, and they're also insulated from ground contact. So we have no thermal bridge between the walls or the basement slab and the ground. So the heat cannot escape. There you see the foam slabs being placed on top of the ground loop. And here you see the basement slab being poured. So it's like in a cocoon of foam. The basement slab doesn't touch the ground, it doesn't touch the walls. So heat is kept inside, and you don't lose heat to the surrounding ground. Here you see the rubber surface of the roof. And sorry, I'll just mention that the heat pump our heat pump sits on the roof. So it's efficient that way in terms of length of piping that's needed for the fluid for air conditioning and heating. And again, it saves utility space as far as the yard goes. Here you see the pink additional foam insulation being applied. And again, you see the green intake and air exhaust tubes. You see the triple pane windows sticking out. And again, they will be flush with the exterior wall once the foam and the exterior foam insulation system is installed. And no, this is not the construction crew getting high. This is called a smoke test. When the blower door test is being done with pressurized air, to find any small leaks, you use smoke to see where it's escaping to the outside, and carefully plug those leaks with foam insulation. Here you see the ground loop system. So this is an auxiliary system, which again cuts down the cost of heating and cooling. What you see, if you can follow my mouse, you've got incoming fluid from the ground loop. So the ground loop, the tubing, it basically stays at 8 degrees. The soil under the basement slab stays at 8 degrees all year round. So in the winter, here's the air is coming in from the top left, and it goes through this water to air heat exchanger in this black box. So there's a tiny pump, takes 7 watts of electricity to pump the fluid, so that's almost free. 8-degree water, incoming air. So in the winter, let's say it's -20, it passes over this radiator with 8-degree water in it, so it warms up by 8-9 degrees. So you get that free heating. So it's only -10 when it goes into the ventilation system. So you get that free heating boost. And in the summer, when you've got 30-degree air coming in, it goes past the 8-degree radiator, so it cools down by about 10 degrees. So you have 20-degree air coming into your ventilation system instead of 30-degree air. So it's free. It's some free heating and air conditioning. And this green tank is just a reservoir to keep the pressure stable. Here is the finished great room. So we're facing southwest to the backyard. And again, there is tinting on those windows to keep the heat transfer in the summer lower. Again, it's of course not a perfect system. We still have to do air conditioning, but we have a very energy efficient heat pump to help us do that. And again, you can see on the very extreme left, the wide window ledges because of the thick walls. Here's our kitchen. You know, I guess quite a modern kitchen, and why not? And we have an induction cooktop, which again is the most energy efficient means of stovetop cooking. Now, because there are no vents in the house from the bathrooms to the outside of the outside environment, all the ventilation is done through the ventilation system. So when you want to ventilate the bathroom, you hit the boost button and it kicks the ventilation system into high gear, and the exhausted air goes into a air return vent in the ceiling of the bathroom, and then it again trades its heat to the incoming fresh air through the ventilation system. So the dryer here, shown on above the washer, is a condensing dryer. So it doesn't need a vent to the outside. It condenses the water when you're drying into a tray, and you just remove the tray of water and use it to water your plants or pour it down the drain. So again, it maintains energy efficiency and humidity. So those are a few observations, and I hope you've learned a little bit during the course of the presentation. And I encourage you, even if you're planning a renovation, there are a number of energy saving features that you can install as a retrofit to an existing home. So, please be aware of that, and good luck with any home build or renovation that you might undertake. Thanks for your time.